So yeah, there's a certain number of people who are still promoting this idea, and I would say that the scriptures that are used to promote it really haven't changed. They're always the same. You come back to the same things over and over again.
When we speak of the immutability of God, we are referring to the fact that God's essential nature never changes.
I would say that the scriptures that are used to promote it really haven't changed. They're always the same.
Right, and in many of your articles, you bring up the idea that the Bible uses equivocal language in certain areas where it touches on the shape of the earth, if you will. What did you mean by that?
All right. I'll use an illustration to explain what I mean. I've come across critics who say that if Jesus really wanted to impress people and impress us, he should have spoken about redwood trees, and then we in the future would have seen that and gone, oh wow, that's amazing proof that God is real. But what these people don't realize is that if Jesus starts talking about redwood trees to these people, nobody's going to understand a word he's going to say, and they're going to think he's crazy. And to us, it's a given. Redwood trees are for real. But if an ancient person, if Jesus talked about redwood trees, they would think he's out of his mind. In the same way, if Jesus had been teaching people that the earth was spherical, rather than as whatever they believed at the time, mostly flat earth, then no one would have listened to him. They would have considered him insane. So you have a sort of a balance here between the power of the message and the truth of the message. How do you strike that balance? And my idea was that God accommodated human finitude. He put in things that could be interpreted either way, that were not definitive language as far as what the Bible was actually teaching. And that was the view as I taught it originally for the Answers in Genesis article. I developed that a bit further for the Christian Research Journal more than a decade later, and it explained it much the same way. That the difficulty was that God was dealing with people who had no concepts or no holding place for certain concepts, like a spherical earth. And so the best way to keep from driving people away from the truth was, when it came to things like cosmology, keep your language simple and equivocal so that it could fit any category of thought that someone might run into.
Interesting.
What these people don't realize is that if Jesus starts talking about redwood trees to these people, nobody's going to understand a word he's going to say, and they're going to think he's crazy. And to us, it's a given. Redwood trees are for real. But if an ancient person, if Jesus talked about redwood trees, they would think he's out of his mind.
If you are saved, do you believe that he is your Savior, the Messiah? Do you believe in the message of the gospel? Do you speak it? Do you believe he died on the cross and was buried in a cave? 3 days later, he was raised. Now he is the King who sits in judgment over us. Do people say you're crazy? Or maybe people say you're evil? Do people say that you have a ridiculous story about Jesus? Is that what's happened to you? If it has, that's nothing new. Jesus, his family, thought there was something wrong with his mind. They tried to drag him out of a crowd. Then he went home, and the crowd gathered again, so that they could not even eat. And when his family heard it, they went out to seize him, for they were saying, "He is out of his mind." Mark 3:20-21.
But if an ancient person, if Jesus talked about redwood trees, they would think he's out of his mind.
So you're not claiming that the Bible has scientific errors. You're just saying that they spoke in language and used words that could go in two different directions. Maybe sphere, maybe circle. But it was spoken in such a way that, hey, it could really go either way.
The Christian is not to compromise, so as to obscure the distinction between good and evil, and is to avoid the errors of those dreamers, who have a spirit of bitterness and contradiction, who reprove everything, and pervert the order of nature. We will see some who are so deranged, not only in religion, but who in all things reveal their monstrous nature, that they will say that the sun does not move, and that it is the earth which shifts and turns. When we see such minds, we must indeed confess that the devil possesses them, and that God sets them before us as mirrors, in order to keep us in his fear. So it is with all who argue out of pure malice, and who happily make a show of their imprudence. When they are told, "That is hot," they will reply, "No, it is plainly cold." When they are shown an object that is black, they will say that it is white, or vice versa. Just like the man who said that snow is black, for although it is perceived and known by all to be white, yet he clearly wished to contradict the fact. And so it is that they are madmen, who would try to change the natural order, and even to dazzle eyes, and benumb their senses.
Exactly, and I think that's really the only option you would have had. This is one of the mistakes I spoke of regarding Kyle Greenwood's book that I just wrote a review for. He seems to believe that, for example, when Daniel was facing the king of Babylon, who was telling him about his dream and of a flat earth, that Daniel should have said, "Hey, hold on there, buddy, the earth isn't flat, let me tell you the truth." Now, what's Nebuchadnezzar going to think of that? He's not going to respect that. All his Chaldean wise men say exactly the opposite. And he might have had some respect for Daniel, but that would have started things going downhill.
Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon, bring me in before the king, and I will shew unto the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah, that will make known unto the king the interpretation. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen, and the interpretation thereof? Daniel answered in the presence of the king, and said, The secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers shew unto the king. But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are these. As for thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, what should come to pass hereafter. And he that revealeth secrets maketh known to thee what shall come to pass. But as for me, the secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation to the king, and that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart.
Now, but what's Nebuchadnezzar going to think of that? He's not going to respect that. All his Chaldean wise men say exactly the opposite. And he might have had some respect for Daniel, but that would have started things going downhill. And there's no need for God to go out of his way just to please people in the 21st century who can't just be satisfied with what they got. I mean, we are not at the belly button of history, and that's what people who make that kind of argument are saying. They're saying that God should have accommodated us at the expense of ancient people. And no, sorry, they were around a lot longer time than we were. So, and we can make the adjustments a lot easier than they can.
We who are faithful to Christ should not be surprised that our relatives, our family members, think that we are crazy. Maybe they think that we are evil. We are judging them. Do you tend to feel discouraged? Don't. Jesus experienced this with people. They misunderstood him. He loved them anyway. It's the same with us today. We need to love those who think we are crazy. Why? Because we believe in Jesus.